Hey everyone, it's Jason here. I'm about to start my next phase of writing, starting a brand new series of novels, and it occurred to me that some of you might be interested in seeing my process. How do I plot novels out? How do I plot series of novels out? Well, today I'm going to show you. This is the method I used to make the Fate of the Forge series, and now it's how I'm going to embark on my next novel series. So sit back and relax, and let's take a look at how I plot a novel using the Snowflake method. Don't forget to pick up your copy of Fate of the Forged. Books 1 through 3 are available now, and Book 4 will be available later this year. So right now we're just using this as an empty book so that you can see how I plot things out. You can see I have 3 categories: world building, plot, and characters. Now, world building is not technically part of the Snowflake method, but you can use the Snowflake method to build a world, and I will be doing so at some point. But I'm not going to be focusing on world building today. I'm just going to be focusing on character and plot, because those are the core elements of the Snowflake method, and that's what everybody's going to be needing. Not everybody needs to build a fantasy world or a sci-fi world or a galaxy or a non-real setting. A lot of people are just going to use their Snowflake to build stories that are set in the real world. So we're just going to concentrate on those. So let me open up plot and characters. And as you can see, I'm already plotting out 3 books in each. So my intention is to write a trilogy this time, but we're only going to focus on 1 book at a time. So let's look at book 1, and we'll go to our templates. Now you'll notice there are steps listed in my categories. The Snowflake method is a 10-step process, the 10th being the manuscript. So we're going to be doing steps 1 through 9. Now, plot has steps 1, 2, 4, 6, 8, and 9. Character comprises steps 3, 5, and 7. So, we're going to go ahead and go to step 1. And step 1 is a single sentence summary. You're going to take, when you have the idea for your novel, when you have the notion of what it is you want to write about, you're going to sit down and write a single sentence that encapsulates the through line plot for your novel. And you're going to be on a specific format. That sentence has to look like this: a character in a setting experiences a disaster and must take drastic action or face a dire consequence. That is the structure of the sentence you're going to use. It's important because it helps set up the plot of your novel. That structure frames your novel's plot. And I've given an example here that I came up with because most people have heard of Lord of the Rings. If they haven't read the book, then they've seen the movies. And while there's a lot of different subplots going on, the through-line plot is a hobbit living in a shire inherits an evil ring of power and must destroy it before it destroys him and all those that he holds dear. That doesn't get into the ranger becoming the king. It doesn't get into the dwarves and their elven rivalries. It doesn't get into any of that. That's all flavor and subplot, and we're not touching that here. Right now we're focusing on the main plot of the story. And if you can get this sentence structured right so that it really tells that plot line, you're never going to have writer's block, because you know, beginning, middle, and end, what's happening in your story. Now, a nice thing about the sentence summary and a lot of the steps in the Snowflake are that they serve double purpose. Let's say you're going to a party and somebody at the party decides they're interested in what you're writing about. And they ask you, what's your story about? And instead of rambling on about, well, there are these hobbits and they live in this shire and they are throwing a party because one of their most respected members is getting ready to retire and move on with his life, and you're bored just listening to me. But if you say, a hobbit living in a shire inherits an evil ring of power and must destroy it before it destroys him and all that he holds dear, now the person you're talking to goes, oh, well, what's a hobbit? What's so dangerous about this ring? Now you're engaging them in a conversation, whereas before you were lecturing them. So I like that about this step. So what do you do once you have this sentence summary? Well, you take and expand it into a paragraph, a very specific paragraph. Again, the first couple of steps are very specific format. Once you get into later steps, it's less formatted this way. But your format is to establish setting, provide 3 disasters, and an ending. And you have 5 sentences with which to do that. Your first sentence is establishing how the world was before the story started. That includes how the people in that world were before the story started. What was your character doing before everything fell apart? The next 3 sentences are your 3 disasters. Your inciting incident, your mid-book disaster that changes the course of the story, and the climactic disaster, the sadistic choice that the person you're writing about has to face before you can wind things down. And then the 5th sentence is how the story ends. Again, serving double purpose. This 5-sentence summary looks really good on the back jacket of your novel. You've written your blurb. You might have to tweak it a little bit, but for the most part, your blurb's written. Now, at this point, you've probably got some characters in your head. Main protagonist, main antagonist, each of those people's buddies. So we flip over to character, and I'm going to go into my template because I haven't written any characters yet. And we have step 3. For each character that you come up with, you're going to come up with their name, what type of character they are, main protagonist, main antagonist, minor character, supporting character, a sentence summary that describes their role in the story, their motivation, which is basically their purpose for pursuing their goals, their goal, what is it they're trying to do in the story, the conflict that gets in their way of achieving that goal, and the epiphany that they reach that changes their goal to more align with their motivation. Now, this epiphany might be false. They may get the wrong idea, but it changes their whole course of action and brings them toward whatever conclusion they're getting. If it's a hero, the epiphany is usually true, and it allows them to make the right choice, the moral choice, the best choice for their goals and their motivations, and guides them toward a heroic end. For the villains, for the anti-heroes, for the people you want to get the wrong conclusion, it leads them to ruin. And then, of course, the paragraph summary that is an expansion of this 1-sentence summary. 4 or 5 sentences that kind of goes into more detail about what this character's role is in the story. Again, you do this for every character you've created. And if in later steps you come up with new characters, you come back and do this step again for those new characters. Now let's go back to step 4. What are we doing with this paragraph summary? You guessed it. We're going to expand each sentence in the paragraph summary into a paragraph, creating your short synopsis. This is the short synopsis that gives a lot of writers headaches. because they're trying to figure out how to summarize their story in a paragraph or two. Well, you're summarizing your story before you've written it in 5 paragraphs. This is what you can send in to your agents and your publishers. Now we're going to pop back over to character and go to step 5, biography. This is where you give more details about the character's history, beliefs, bonds with other characters, physical descriptions. You do this again for every character that you've created that you did a step 3 on. You're going to do this for the step 5. Now for your supporting characters and your minor characters, you're not going to write as much as you're going to write for your main protagonist and main antagonist. The less they appear in the story, the less important they are to the story, the less you have to write here. Maybe a sentence in each category for your really unimportant characters, a couple of lines for supporting characters, and as many lines as you want, a couple pages of information for your main characters. One of the things that I love doing, and this was a great tool that I don't remember who taught me this, where I read it, where I encountered it, but a great tool to do is nothing is more important to me than. You write 3 things that are nothing is more important to me than for each character. And you make sure that those 3 things conflict with one another. So that when you're writing, you can, at any given point, when it's important to your character, force them to have to choose between 2 of them. And that directs character growth for that character at that point in the story. I love that little tip. I love using it. So we're going to pop back over to step 6. All right. Anyone want to guess what we're going to do next? That's right. Long synopsis is taking each sentence in the short synopsis and expanding it into a paragraph. You tell me where writer's block has any place to manifest itself in this method. It is next to impossible to have writer's block while using the Snowflake method, because all you're doing is taking your beginning, middle, and end and filling in the meat of it. You started off with something like bare bones, but you're giving it more structure, you're giving it more meat, you're giving it more power each step of the process. And if you write something in later steps that contradicts something you wrote in earlier steps, you can just go back and adjust it. You've got everything laid out here. You've got all your information. You just need to go back and make minor edits to your Snowflake, and you're on the right path. So now we're going to pop back over to characters, and we're going to do the all-important step 7, tags. Tags are the things that help your reader identify your character. And of course, the normal stuff: height, weight, build, hair color, facial hair, eyes, what eye color they have, scars and tattoos, familial tags, parents, siblings, spouses, pets, relatives living, how they dress, behavioral tags. When it's not the point of view characters that you're looking at, how do you know what they're thinking and feeling other than by the way they behave? What habits do they have? What nervous tics? And when you are in that person's point of view, you can focus on the tags that now we can see because we're inside their head. Their true motivation, what they believe their motivations are, their irrational beliefs, their moral compass, the things that they like most and least, what their philosophy is. All these things and more are handled in this step. Again, for each character you're creating. You may not have to do quite so many for your minor characters. In fact, for your minor characters, you might just do 1 or 2 that are really important and then skip the rest. But for your major characters, you want to have as much information as you can, because it's really easy for you to have a major character that starts off a tall, thin, black-haired woman and ends the story as a short, heavyset, blonde man. It happens. If you don't keep track of your tags, your character can, that's an extreme example, but your character can morph over the course of a novel. So you got to be careful with those tags. Now we're going to pop over to step 8. You'll notice that step 8 has the acts listed, because step 8, you're doing a chapter by chapter, scene by scene breakdown of every scene in your novel. Now, I'm a little more complex with my version than the normal Snowflake, but what's important is this: your scene numbers, which point of view character this scene is being seen from, and the description of the scene. Now, for the rest of this, there are two basic types of scenes. They are, in terms of your large-scale structure, confrontation scenes and resolution scenes. Confrontation scenes start with a goal. What is the point of view character's intended goal in this scene? And then there is a conflict. What is standing in the character's way? And then, when the character thinks he's overcome the conflict, or they have overcome the conflict, a disaster hits. Something that knocks them on their bums, mentally or physically, or emotionally, and forces them to have to stop and regroup. And then resolution scenes have reactions. How does the character react to that disaster? Now, this could be instantly after the disaster hits. It could be 20 years later. But how is that character set in their mind? What is their mindset for the next scene as a result of that disaster? Then we have the dilemma. How is the character going to overcome that disaster? And then decision. This is what they've decided they're going to do in order to progress in the story, which feeds into the next goal. So it's a cyclical thing. Goal, confrontation, resolution, confrontation, resolution, confrontation, resolution. Now, step 9, I'll be honest, I normally skip. Well, I don't really skip it. I've modified the way it works. I don't usually do step 9 in my notes. I usually do step 9 in my manuscript. Step 9 is basically take and make a multi-paragraph description of each scene. So what I normally do is, at this point, I go ahead and create my manuscript document, and I put in the headers for the acts and the chapters and the scenes, and I go ahead and make page breaks for every scene. And then I go ahead and type in my step 9 at the top of each scene. That way it's right there in front of me as I'm working. When I'm done writing the scene, I delete the step 9 for that scene. And then I start writing my scenes. I start writing my novel. I'm done my Snowflake. I can work on my manuscript. And that's it. That's the entire process. If you have any questions about anything in this video, go ahead and leave a comment. I will try to answer them either in the comments or in another video. Thank you all for watching. I hope this was useful to you. Have a great rest of your day.